Welcome to No Boxes, Just Verses, the podcast where we go beyond the bios, beyond the titles, and we explore the lessons that shape today's most inspiring voices, all through the songs that move them. Each week, we build a playlist of a leader's life. 5 songs, 5 lessons, one unforgettable playlist.
Let's put the pedal to the metal, let the top lean back. I don't know where we're going, I don't know what we're running to. I'm checking for you, how you feel about that. I think it's time we rendezvous.
And today, I'm joined by the business, the cultural icon whose career spans from her New Orleans roots to the halls of Harvard, to the White House, to Black media and beauty brands. She's known as a renowned leader, strategist, and connector, redefining every space she enters. Please welcome Desirée Rogers. Desirée, welcome to the podcast.
I am so excited. I can't wait. You know, I like my music.
I know you love your music and you love your beauty, and I will definitely be shouting that out as well because it has helped me a lot personally. But let me read your bio for our listeners, and then we'll get into your journey. And it is lots of twists and turns. So I can't wait to dive into this. So Desirée Rogers is a renowned leader, strategist, and connector who has redefined every role she has had, from corporate boardrooms to the White House. Currently, she is the co-owner and CEO of Black Opal LLC, and she oversees the iconic Fashion Fair and Black Opal beauty brands, where she serves multicultural audiences, and her products are sold nationwide at retailers, including Sephora and Ulta. You can also go to the website and order them as well. I know because I have done plenty of orders. But more than beauty companies, these brands are really cultural touchstones. Fashion Fair in particular has long celebrated and elevated Black beauty. And just to take a step back here, I remember we used to dress up and get ready for those fashion shows that used to come and travel all around the US. And so we'll get into this in your journey about how you really revitalize this brand and just what it really means for the culture. But your career, let's go back, has spanned transformative leadership in business, media, and public service. You were the social secretary for President Obama, where you brought the administration's value of inclusion, transparency, and diversity to life through experiential events. You revitalized Ebony and Fashion magazine as CEO of Johnson Publishing. You positioned Chicago as a top global travel destination and drove growth at places like People's Energy, Allstate, and the Illinois Lottery. That is such a diversity of experiences. I can't wait to dive into that. You are a graduate of Wellesley College and Harvard Business School, and you're the recipient of Harvard Business School's 2024 Alumni Achievement Award. You serve on the boards of Stagwell, Inspired Entertainment, and the American Cancer Society. You have done so much. You're an Uber connector. You're across so many industries, from regulated energy, insurance giants, to national diplomacy, now modern beauty brands. Desirée, you do it all. I literally am so honored to have you on the show. Welcome to No Boxes, Just Verses.
Well, I am honored to be here. I just want those glasses. I want those glasses.
You want the glasses?
I want more things, but right now I'm just asking for the glasses.
Yes, listeners, I have on some bright pink glasses. If you watch this on video as well on YouTube and places like that, I am known for my glasses. That was my COVID indulgence, was I just bought a whole bunch of glasses. People were ordering all kinds of things, but it was the glasses. So I'm happy to send you the link to where you can get some more. Let's start with a young Desirée growing up in New Orleans.
Got it right.
I'm married to a man who's from the East Bank. He grew up as a kid in Harvey. So I was taught how to say New Orleans, and I was taught how to say Go Saints. But let's talk about a young Desirée growing up in New Orleans. The song that you pick is an interesting one because it's Man in the Mirror, which is a really reflective song. So I want to understand just what was going on with you. What was your dreams, your ambitions, and why that song?
When you listen to Man in the Mirror, it really is about you and you thinking about what can you do for the world. It's really taking that first look at yourself. And I think I was always thinking, even as a young person, beyond just myself, and how could I participate in the world. Remember, I'm growing up in the South. I am put into educational systems very early on where there are very few people that look like me. And so I'm having to really think about, why am I here? Why can't I be at the neighborhood school down the street with
Right.
all the people that look like me? So I have to make sense of this. And I have to think a little bit further than just those early years. And so that's how I did it. I thought, maybe I'm going to be called to do something a little bit different than everybody else. I am different than everyone else. And that was so early on when I think back. And I just love that song because it really talks about your own personal spirit, your own ability to not always be complaining about what's around you, but think about, how do you impact that? And I know right now it sounds like, oh, she just made that up, because today, really, we all should be looking at the man in the mirror, or the woman in the mirror, or the person in the mirror, however you want to do it. But I think because I was one of the few, you're not lonely, but you're by yourself a lot in those circumstances outside of the home. It just required me to really motivate myself in many ways and make up, right or wrong, what was I going to do? How was I going to make the best of what could have been a completely more lonely situation, particularly in elementary school. I just reunited probably 15 years ago with my best friend from elementary school. She saw this person at the White House and she's like, "Is that my Desiree? Is that you?" And so we reunited. I was Black, she's white. Not was, am. And so we had a really hard time in what was still a little bit of a segregated South in the relationship that we were able to build, mainly based on, for us, performance in class. We had this kind of friendly competition about being one and two through the years that we were together. And so academics were very important to the two of us, even that early on, because I'm coming from a home of two educators. So it's very easy for me to fall into that. But we really had an amazing time learning from each other very early on. She's a super brilliant woman. And so I'm lucky to have had her in my life so early.
So you're passing your neighborhood school. You're going to, I believe you went to Catholic school, at least for.
I went Catholic
Yeah.
school elementary and Catholic all-girls school across town. So I was basically not bused, but driven,
Right.
whatever, took the bus across town to get what my parents considered the best education in the city at the time.
And those are some formative years. And it's interesting because you eventually, like say, now work at beauty. But help us think through how you felt the confidence in your own beauty, your own confidence, where you're in an environment where hardly nobody looks like you.
I think it comes from my home. I'm so lucky that I had 4 grandparents and mom and dad and my brother. And so I had this amazing group of family members that were super supportive to what I was doing at the time. And my brother, of course, went to the neighborhood, St. Augustine, which is still an amazing school for young Black men. So he was in the neighborhood. I was not, but super, super supportive. My mother and grandmother ran their own business. They did daycare centers because they realized that women in our community were going to work and felt very uncomfortable about just leaving their children anywhere. And so my grandmother and my mother really took that business over and created a massive business in the city where thousands of kids went over the years and were educated in early education. And so I had 2 great role models of what business looked like, what an entrepreneur looked like, the long hours, but also the satisfaction of these kids getting a great education and a great start early on. So I felt like, not Supergirl, but I was very much supported by my family in really trying to achieve from an educational standpoint at the highest level. I wasn't a sports person. I didn't do any of that. They laugh about my lack of ability, but really focused on my studies from, I would say, all the way through, and really was super competitive in terms of really excelling overall. So that was my whole ball game. And my father's a coach, so he was like right there pushing me. But that was really my agenda. That, and also, as my mother would say, Desiree never saw a party she didn't want to attend. So I also had a lot of fun through the years as well.
all the things you're talking about that you're learning and you're seeing and you're basically getting a masterclass as a young girl comes back in your journey and in your career successes that you wind up taking. But a lot of that is rooted right here in New Orleans.
For sure. My grandparents had only had a 7th and 8th grade education, but super smart people. I mean, my grandfather would put numbers on a sheet of paper when he'd say, you need to add these up for me. I want to check your math skills. So there was constant little tasks of using your mind. This is back in the day. He had his calculator, but he would not give that to me. Or I would ride with him as he delivered children to their homes. He was the driver. Our whole family was involved in the business. And he would say, okay, which way do I go? So there was no maps. So it was memory work. It was paying attention and understanding, turn left, turn right. He was constantly challenging me to do better and be smarter. The family really felt like I had an opportunity to really excel in academics, and they all participated in my drills. I mean, as a kid, you don't realize, you're like, oh, he doesn't know how to add this. That's what I'm thinking. I know how to add it. I got it. Or he's challenged me about what turn. I'm like, I got this, Grandpa. I got it. Turn here, do this, do that. So I'm thinking I'm like helping him when he certainly, as I look back, he certainly could have done his additions and he certainly knew where to go. So they wanted me to have successes early on and to feel even more confident. This will come back. We'll come back to this repetitive and this memorization work later in our discussion as I learned that I have a learning disability in college.
Okay. Let's get to it because that's the next part of your journey. You wind up picking to go to college at Wellesley and then obviously later Harvard Business School, HBS. But take us to the journey of why there, like why that school? You're certainly close to like a Tulane and all these other places, but this is a totally different type of school. This is taking you out of your comfort zone in the South. You're going up north. You're going to the land of Ivy Leagues and all the things. How do you decide to make that change? And the song you picked are We Are One by Mace and Frankie Beverly.
Maze and Frankie Beverly were a big part of New Orleans culture. So anyone from New Orleans, everybody knows that song. We play that song for everything. So I think it's more of a like, I'm leaving behind that a little bit, but we're still one. I'm still one with my family. You know what I mean? I'm like moving to the next rung. So I won't hear it as often. And so I think that's part of it for me. And I often, as a young child, always said I wanted to go to Ivy League. That's going to get done. Of course, I'm a child. I don't realize what you have to do that. I'm just like, I'm going there. I'm like, yep, we'll get it done. What do I need to do? We'll get it done. I mean, if not me, then who? And that's why I'm staying with that top group in school, right? I'm like, who are they going to pick if not us? Obviously, there's competition among us. And the interesting thing is my cousins who were older than I, one cousin went to Wellesley, another went to Yale, and they both said to me, we know you want to go to Harvard. You need to go to Wellesley, study there, and then apply to graduate school at Harvard. So that's how that happened. I wasn't smart enough to figure that out, but they were like, we really feel like the education at Wellesley is superior to undergraduate Harvard because there was a lot of teaching associates teaching and not full professors. So listen to them. And that's what I did. My father very much wanted me to go to Tulane. I had a full scholarship there. But for me, it was like repeating high school because my high school was right down the street from Tulane.
Okay.
So it's like, I'm always about exploration, and trying to see what's next. What else can we see? And I could always go back to New Orleans if that's what I wanted to do. But as a young kid, probably starting as early as 5, I was like, I'm out of this joint. I'm going north for school, people. Get ready.
And you are definitely out of there. You make good on that promise because you do leave. You wind up going there, have a great experience. You then do go to Harvard. Like you're following all the things that you said you were going to do. And you do wind up going to HBS in full circle. How amazing. I'd love to hear about your times at Harvard, but how amazing that many years later, that Desiree that's at Harvard, I'm not sure she's dreaming of the fact that in 2024, she's going to get this Alumni of the Year award.
Never. One of the biggest things that happened in that first year there, besides just the adjustment, because remember, I'd been in this cocoon for all the family members, the business. My father was very active in the city. It was very much a cocoon. Even though I was going across town to go to school, I still had this major cocoon of extended family, of friends, etc. So it's the first time I'm really on my own. And like, even though I said I wanted this all this time, so I have to adjust to that. And I was diagnosed with dyslexia. So I was
Okay.
diagnosed with dyslexia in my freshman year because I was struggling so much with foreign language. And that's where it shows up for me. If I have not heard a word, I probably will mispronounce it. So
Wow.
names are very difficult for me. Anything that I haven't heard, but I have a tremendous memory, remember, built up by my grandfather and my father of a constant testing of information that I'm taking in. So I take in information maybe a little bit differently than others, very quick, and I'm always on guard, right? Because I'm trying to get it all because I know I have this issue. Anyway, Harvard and Wellesley were great. Hard work, certainly, for me, very challenging, but learned a lot, really pushed myself. And I was a different kind of person in terms of when I compared myself to my class and what they wanted to do. Most people were interested in investment banking,
Hmm.
and now it's venture capital. And then most people were also interested in management consulting, as those are jobs that paid the most. Those are the jobs that could get you to the level that they were trying to get to. I always felt the money would come. I actually took my lowest paying offer, but I really was interested in managing people. I really wanted to manage teams, and I really wanted to challenge myself in the management of teams and be a CEO someday. And so I would often say to them, you guys are going to need people like me to manage all these companies you're buying. And was very surprised that I was chosen for that award because, first of all, I'm not a management consultant or a venture capitalist or a investment banker, and made my way through so many industries. So I didn't stay in one place to work my way up to be the CEO of a very large company. It was not in the cards for me because just too boring. I need to have new challenges all the time. I
Yeah.
need to be a little bit frightened.
Yeah. And uncomfortable,
Be a
right?
little bit scared that I can't do it. I get bored so quickly and so easily that I got to make certain that I'm challenged. And at this point, the passion has to be there as well. So we go into after college and graduate school, the learning years where I'm really putting
Yeah.
together my tool chest.
I think you're just one of those people that's just intellectually curious about a lot of things. And that curiosity helps you move from industry to different roles. But what's woven in all of that is you're still bringing the same type of discipline, the same type of vigor, the same type of strategic insights to different industries. And that's hard for a lot of people to do. So I actually think that's harder for a lot of people.
Yeah. You know what? My brother once said to me, he goes, what do you bring to the table? And so
Mm.
that was an interesting moment for me because I thought, do I bring anything to the table? Everyone does that, right? You're like, you give a party and you're like, no one's coming. It's like that. Oh, we all have that. Oh my God, this is not going to happen. And so I thought, and I took a step back and I said, I'm really interested in mature businesses and twisting them around and making certain they're successful moving forward. So whether that be my job at the lottery, where you think, okay, but you've got all this competition, you've got gambling, you've got online gambling, racing, sports betting. How do you make something that's been around for X number of years more exciting and more fun? And so we did lots of partnerships there with different groups, all the collaborations that people talk about today. That was the name of the game and how we won. I like the challenge of taking something mature and then turning it around and doing the work a little bit differently.
Mhm.
And so learning from the past, but then saying, okay, what does the future look like? It's hard work and you don't always guess right, but it's fun work if you do get it right because
Yeah.
many of these things are worth keeping. Lotteries are worth keeping. You can love
Yeah.
them, but we need them.
Yeah.
When I went into the White House, and really I think of myself as really protecting and also embracing and making certain the world understood brand Obama. And I got in big trouble for saying that, but that's what I believe the work to be. They wanted it to be the people's house. They wanted everyone to feel welcome. They wanted to do some new things. They wanted it to be part of their personalities and their values. They wanted it to be hopeful and what they had won on. And so we kept that in the back of our minds of every event that we did. So whether it be the Easter egg roll that traditionally had been only attended by people from Virginia or Maryland or DC because they stood in line and they got the tickets, we made that into a lottery so that the whole nation could possibly win an opportunity to be there. So that's one example. Oh, wow. Look at you.
So I actually I grew up in the DMV, and my mom found this. She was going through her house. And so it's actually on my desk. And for those who can't see it, it's an egg from the White House that was part of an Easter egg roll. So that was so funny. We didn't plan
Right.
this. Well, let's go back to like how that even starts for you, because you do leave the North and you start your career. You go to Chicago pretty much fairly early on. The
Mhm.
song that you pick for this mid stage of like life and career and starting is Family Reunion by the OJs. So take us through some of those earlier positions. Like I mentioned before, you wind up working and leading the Illinois Lottery. You work at People's Energy. You work at Allstate. These are conceivably, to most people, not related. But I think for a Desiree, they are all kind of related.
This becomes my new family, right? Chicago is the beginning of my new family. I do have some what we would call traditional cousins here in Chicago, but it's also where I start my family. I get married, I have my child. And so it's the beginning of what will be my family for the rest of my life. And also the family of these big companies. They are also my family because I'm spending so much time. I come in and I go into AT&T, into an operations assignment, and I spend quite a few years there really working with a team where we're doing engineering type work, but they become family. They teach me how do you operate in an operations type of role inside of a large company. I wanted to be operations because there's no question about did you do it or not do it. You're getting scored every day. It's kind of like sales, right? You're getting a score. So no one can take the work away from you. And it just so happened that a lot of the team I was working with were minorities and women. So they became family because I'm like, guys, we can do this. We can get this done. And so, it's AT&T. It's then a newsstand division that's owned by a gentleman here that owns all of these retail stores in office buildings. And so it's setting all of those up. Lots of minority women working those stores. It is People's, which is everyone needs their utilities, right? And insurance. So businesses that are important to everyday life. I'm learning the ropes on how to run these big operational types of organizations, how we integrate marketing, how we integrate operations, how we integrate regulatory and government. How do we present to consumers who are so angry with us because their bill is high or whatever it is?
Right.
How do we incorporate all that in a union environment
Yeah.
where a lot of the people in these unions look like me? And so how do we ensure that there's a balance between management and the unions and that people are making a good wage, people are being treated well, all of those complicated things? How do all those things come together in these very mature businesses? So the whole idea was maybe thinking through like, how do we become more customer centric? How do we listen to the customer and ensure that we're taking that into account as we're doing our work, as opposed to just assuming you don't have anything else to do. There's no competition, so you got to like us. So I would say the gas guys, can you introduce yourself when you show up and don't just say gas company? They know
Right.
you're the gas. What's your name? Hi, I'm Sam from the gas company. Because maybe we could sell some other things to
Right.
that person. But it also gives the person a little bit more rewarding feel about the work they're doing, right? Because they get to say their name and say who they are. And so it's a combination of marketing and operations and really thinking about that in a bigger scale. And also in these regulatory types of arrangements, certainly the politicians want the consumers to be happy with you as you maybe are preparing for a rate increase or something like that. It's a puzzle.
So help me think through how you're strategizing for your career, because you're going from big companies to like non-profit slash public kind of.
The smaller one was before. So those were a string of larger operations. And not until then I went to the White House after Allstate. So I left Allstate and went to the White House. But I was volunteering in a lot of political organizations and a lot of non-for-profit types of organizations. So different museums, and did non-for-profit, almost all the large ones, hospital, the museum, science and industry, all of those I participated in some way during that process. So I was doing that work as well and trying to lend the more corporate ear to some of these non-for-profits.
So think about this. You're a big corporate, you're doing highly regulated, you're doing government slash quasi-government, like nonprofits, volunteering, but also lending like a lot of strategic advice. Honestly, I think by the time it gets to you going to the White House, I don't know who else would have all the exposure to all that type of stuff. Like, it's kind of unicorn-ish.
It took me time to take a step back and realize this is what I was doing, but I wasn't quite. When my brother said, "What do you have to show for it?" That's when I start thinking, wait a minute, you're not going to get me all spun out that this doesn't make any sense. So let me take a step back. I got regulatory, I have ops, I have marketing, I have responsibility, I have non-for-profit and how they interface. And so I've gotten a really good look at all of this a couple of ways. And so it really served me well when I went into the White House for certain, but it really served me well when I came out because I went to smaller organizations. And so I needed to have that generalist understanding to be able to do the work I was doing at these smaller organizations.
Let's talk about how the whole White House opportunity comes about, what that's like to go through the process of interviewing and being chosen, et cetera, to work for the White House, to work for President Obama. Let's talk about how that all transpired for you, because I think it's a pretty interesting story.
So John and I, my ex-husband, we did a lot, and we still do things together. We do a lot of fundraising in the Democratic Party. Now my daughters, the three of us today still do a lot of fundraising across the nation for candidates that we think should get a chance and try to help them raise money. President Obama at that time knew him much earlier than that. John actually recruited Craig, who is Michelle's brother, for Princeton. The original link was Craig and Michelle, and then enter President Obama, First Lady Michelle Obama. I want to make certain that everyone has their proper titles.
That's right.
Yes. So we known their families for quite some time. And we're super excited as the campaign was. It's really interesting to be part of a campaign when you're in that hometown. I'm certain anyone that knows the candidate before, the whole town is excited, right? As the momentum is building. And as you can see, that candidate is going to probably make it or was very close to making it. Actually, after the win, President Obama worked out of John's offices for some time here in Chicago before they had their transition offices. I was approached for this position because there's a whole book, if you don't know, of all the positions. So people in the know, they're paging through the positions, people that worked in the campaign. I did not work in the campaign, although I was around the campaign because of fundraising. And I went to a couple of debates and things on the road, because the other thing is that it's very lonely for the candidate just to be here and there. So there would be opportunities to be supportive in some of these stops along the way with a grueling campaign. So you get to see, boy, this is really tough. It's unbelievably hard work to win anything like this on a nationwide basis. And you really are working around the clock. So people think they work hard in corporate. I would say it's nothing like what happens in government. It is not even close. I was asked to be the social secretary. So I had to look that up. What is that? It doesn't sound good for a corporate person.
Right.
I decided that I would certainly do it. It was not without trepidation for sure, because I'm coming out of, just had gotten to Allstate. I didn't want Tom, who's the CEO, still is the CEO, be disappointed in me because I had committed to do this work and things were going very well. And so I knew that I was going to have a big job there and a big role there. It was a lot to give up, but I thought, wow, Desiree, you've been doing all this public work. This is your opportunity to really serve a president, and you just have to say yes.
You just have to say yes. And I think I'm glad that we'll have this opportunity to dispel what a social secretary does, because I think people need to understand. And then especially you put your stamp on it as well. It's a role that's not just throwing parties. It's really about taking the values and the agendas and turning that into experiences, like you did the Easter egg role, like
Right.
into experiences that really shape what's going on for that president, for that administration, et cetera. It's aligning, I say it's aligning values to culture, but I'd love to hear what you found out that the job was and then what you put your stamp on in terms of the job.
So when I think about that experience at the White House, I had no idea what I was getting into. No idea. I'm used to a meritocracy, and there was no such thing here. So really, when you're working at the White House, I would say that it's like the Super Bowl. It is the R's and the D's are playing. There's some R's on the D team, and there's some D's on the R team. And there are no breaks, there are no timeouts, and the media is watching. I just ignored that, which probably shouldn't have, because I was just all about the work. I was like, I'm going to give them everything that I've learned and that I know. And these things are going to be so unbelievable that it's just going to be unbelievable. We're going to pull out every stop. And it's particularly sensitive and important to me because these are African Americans. And so there's no way we're going to flub up something like this. And it's going to represent everything that they believe and want and have promised the American people, down to China selection. What does that really mean? It means we conducted a lot of change internal to the infrastructure that had existed prior to my arrival. And so the simplest of things that in my mind were like not that important were important to the people that were there that had historically done things a certain way. And so those groups immediately became not enemies, but naysayers. Because remember, this is a bigger play than what's happening over here. I just didn't think people would be that, these are my words, petty.
Right.
Do you really care if that plate's yellow and this one's green? Really?
Wow.
So we mixed up presidents' R's and D's on the table. That was part of being inclusive. That's a baby example, but you get the picture. All of these tiny things add up to something that people are like, what about all these changes? Why are there all these changes? And how does that impact me in the role that I play? It makes me uncomfortable. And so we looked at the job as, like I said, a kind of a marketing and a brand work, and making certain that we looked at it really carefully. And certainly people were going to be excited to meet the president and the first lady. But we also wanted them to take something away in addition to that for each visit. So we did the first performance of Hamilton was done at a poetry slam.
Okay, there was a poetry slam in the White House.
We did
Had that ever happened?
No. We did a poetry slam, and we had, at the time, there was I think Def Jam had the poetry slam contest. It just so happened that the finalist was from Hawaii. And then we had that person against James Earl Jones doing Othello as his poetry slam. And then we had Hamilton again, just helping people to think about poetry has been around for lots of years. So let's think about it in an open and inclusive way. And let's mix Shakespeare with Hamilton. And let's mix it. So it was like before Hamilton existed, we were onto it. We were on to let's see how we commingle all these things together and have a poetry jam. And we did that constantly. When we did the Hispanic Festival, we had every form of that culture represented. Florida was represented, New York, Puerto Ricans were represented, California was represented, Texas was represented. So we're all together. And they were like crying because they're like, no one ever put us all together. We've never even, all the performers, we've never even met everybody. And this was also a nod to Sotomayor, who had just become the first Supreme Court justice. So we're always thinking about how do we make this bigger than what it really is, bigger than a concert. So there's all this strategy behind every event that we did. And we had the historical events, and then we had the new events. Obviously, the Poetry Slam was a new event. Easter Egg Roll was a historical event. The first party that we did was the Governor's Ball. Traditionally, the Governor's Ball had been more sedate. They would sit down, maybe listen to a piano player or a violinist in their chairs. And we said, how old are the governors? Okay, we got the age. And we said, what bands would they enjoy? And we had a list of bands, and I chose Earth, Wind, and Fire. Some of my younger contemporaries at the time, remember this is almost 16 plus years ago.
Yeah.
And Earth, Wind, and Fire was one a little bit downward. And I said, no, that's the band. So we got them, and the governors did not leave. They danced. There was a conga line. They had a ball because you think they're all dressed up. They want to have some fun. They're in their 50s. Come on. They want to party. And Earth, Wind, and Fire today, they're like, that was the beginning of our resurgence.
Wow.
So part of it is thinking about what the consumer is going to enjoy, but also how do we help a group that deserves the help? They deserve the shine. And why not have them be the first band to play in the Obama administration?
And shout out to them because they're still performing. I just saw them a couple weeks ago. They were on TV, right? For September 21st.
I'm still in touch with them. They're my buddies. Once I'm not talking about this out of school, they have told me this. They have told me that was the rebirth. And so for the Obamas to have played a role, and there's hundreds of these examples, right?
Yep.
That's day one on the ground, thinking through how do we make certain that everything that they represent is taken into account, from the forks and the knives and the plates to what is served, to who is playing, to the seating, to everything else. And so that's how we approached every event, calling on every relationship that we had over the years and giving them an opportunity to participate and to bring to the table the skills that they were so happy. We had so many different volunteers who brought to the table their skill set for free. Because again, part of it was not spending a whole bunch of money to do these things. So experts volunteer to come in and set up things and look at things in a different way and do the work. So it was an amazing opportunity to really be able to serve my country at that point in time. It really was. They were and are amazing people, and they deserve the very best. And that's what I gave them.
I will tell you, all of your journey, all the culmination of everything you have been working on came to center when you did this. And the song that you actually picked, and it makes so much sense, was Formation by Beyonce.
We had to be in formation. What does that mean? That means you cannot mess up for a president, and everything needs to line up. If it doesn't, then there's going to be a problem, which eventually there was a problem. Everything needs to be in formation because remember the scrutiny. Something could be made out of nothing. That's the politics of it all.
Right.
but the role, the work is much bigger than anything that would be me, for example. When you're working for a politician, someone that's serving us, you have to do whatever it takes to protect the work they're doing and their ability to serve and do that well. That's what you sign up for.
I think that this really molds who you are by the time you become a CEO, which is your next phase. And as a leader, I think coming off of that experience, it catapults you to a whole different stratosphere. And how fortunate it is, like, because only so many people get that experience in life. Although I don't, like you said, politics is way harder than corporate. You went back to corporate, but I think that really propelled your success in corporate again. Because now you go back in the corporate.
It's the stamina required to work in government. It's 24/7.
Yeah.
It's like the utilities, right? Which is 24/7. An explosion or something can happen in the middle of the night. So you're on call. It's like an emergency doctor in terms of the stamina and what's required. I come out and I have to take a period to think because there's a whole issue with these two people coming into the state dinner. And so I really have to take a moment to think about what did I really learn from that incident? Because I felt very strongly that I wanted to protect my team because they had not done anything wrong.
Yeah.
They really hadn't. And so it's just circumstances that allowed this to happen. And we took the brunt of that. And so I wanted to make certain that the parents that were calling me about their children's performance knew that their children had not done anything outside of doing the work they should do. And so that was very important to me that come across to those parents that I spoke with and the team that stayed. I exited, but I wanted them to feel good about the work that they were doing and that they had not done anything incorrect. And so it took me a while to think about lessons learned.
Back to your man in the mirror, right?
I'm back
You
to
were being-
I'm like, okay, let's think about this and let's think about like how this could have been potentially handled differently. Not the entry of the people because we had nothing to do with that. And how could possibly things been handled a little bit differently? And so I thought a long time, it took me a little bit to kind of think about what I could have done differently. I came to my conclusions. And so I spent a little time on that.
Desiree, the event that you were talking about was when, these two people who were not on the guest list crashed a White House event. And there was a whole bunch of scrutiny about how could they get in the White House, et cetera. Ultimately, the Secret Service did take the bulk of the responsibility for that security breach. That was not something that your staff handled. But it was a difficult time because there was just a lot of criticism and a lot of people pointing fingers, as politics will do, at you and your office. And really appreciate how you said you've navigated that difficult time and really wanted to make sure that your team was taken care of.
I think that it's important not everything is rosy. Not everything is going to go perfect. And so it's important to put things in the proper, because we're all going to make mistakes. I often say, I make multiple mistakes a week, but did I put them in their proper perspective? People want you to learn from everything. Some mistakes you learn from and some you don't. It's okay. Put them in their proper perspective and make certain that whatever happened, if you learned or didn't learn, that you do the best you can not to repeat. The whole thing is not to repeat, and the whole thing is to have it be as valuable to you, that experience, as it can be in your journey. That's really what we're talking about. I think the most difficult thing that I've ever had to face is cancer. So nothing is going to beat that, okay? So I said, did someone die with a cancer? We can figure it out. We can figure it out. There has to be perspective in everything that anyone's confronting. There just has to be. So that's the key, is putting things in perspective, taking your time to work through it, and knowing that no one's perfect. Not one person is perfect. My mother said, as long as you're living, there's going to be mistakes.
That's right.
And then I also thought that now was the time not to go back into corporate, but it was a time the president and first lady really inspired me to go back to do something with my community. I felt like I was ready. I felt like I had been practiced enough, rehearsed enough, and that I wasn't going to screw it up. because when you're doing something for your own people, there's a different kind of pressure. You really don't want to mess it up. If people are counting on you in these public organizations that are historical, whether it be serving a president and first lady or working at Johnson Publishing, that's a lot to take on. And so I did consulting work for Johnson Publishing. That was my first job coming out of the White House. So I became a consultant there. I knew the family well, and I knew that there was a lot of transition, another mature industry, publishing, that there was a lot of transition that was going on in publishing in 2010. And so I said, wow, let me see if I can think through what might be a recommendation of how we ensure that this work remains part of our history.
Johnson Publishing, for some of the listeners who don't know, was started in 1942 by John H. Johnson, and it went on to become this publishing kind of giant with magazines like Ebony and Jet, and they were very critical to the African American community. So we're talking about a brand. I mean, that literally, I remember as a kid running to see the weekly Jet magazines, if you will, and my grandmother having a stack of them all over the table in the family room and things of that nature. And so 1942, this is a big time brand, especially in the culture that you decide to take the helm of. That's a lot of responsibility.
It was the first magazines that documented our history. There was no internet, and no one was documenting our history at that time. And so it was really the documentation of our history and what was happening with entertainers, politicians, poets, writers, everyday people. It was all of that wrapped into two magazines that also extended into cosmetics, because at the time in 73, Mrs. Johnson had a traveling show, which was mentioned earlier, and she had models from all over the diaspora, every tone, every size. Oh, these certain companies now have plus size models. She always had plus size models. This was nothing new. She's the first to put music behind walking on a fashion show. She had Beverly Johnson. She had Richard Roundtree. She had Pat Cleveland, who was a big model. Many of them started at the Ebony Fashion Fair show. So this show traveled all around the country, and she wanted Black communities to see couture in person. And so she bought all of this fashion herself because they refused to lend it to her. So she bought it. And she started Fashion Fair Cosmetics because none of the big houses would create deeper skin tones. They wouldn't do it. They didn't think there was a market for it. So she started it herself in 73. And so this was near and dear to every Black American and is near and dear today. They had 5 million photographs of African Americans since 1942, which are now at the Smithsonian. A lot of those photographs that you see at the Smithsonian, you'll see that they're coming from Ebony and Jet magazines. And so it is a very important part of our history, even more important today as things are getting changed and wiped out in some instances, that we have the history and that we understand the history of African American people in this country. So yes, it was a big deal. It was a big deal to do it. But I thought, wow, every day when I walked along those colonnades in the White House, I thought, I'm not certain what's next, but whatever I do next is going to be for Black people. That's what I decided walking that colonnade.
You certainly do that. You wind up going there. And then take us through, so you're running that, but then take us through how that leads to Black Opal and Fashion Fair.
So during the time that I was there, I realized that cosmetics were here to stay. Print was moving to digital. So I thought, wow, in my mind, if I owned those companies, I would put all the money in the beauty business. And that's what I would have done, and bought another beauty business, i.e. Black Opal. That was not done. I exited the company after 6 years of work. And I realized that through the work there, how important it was for all women, I think. But my experience was with Black and brown women to feel beautiful through their own eyes. Because so many times you're beautiful if you look a certain way. Women would say to me, oh, I don't feel like I should wear a red lipstick because my lips are larger. Or I don't think I could carry that color. Or I want to hide my complexion. And part of what I realized is once we got them in the right shade, once we got them into a color that they liked for lipstick, or even just treated skin problems, and they went home and were able to recreate this themselves, it was a game changer for everything else they did, whether they're taking care of a parent or a child or a husband, a partner, trying to work the corporate ladder, trying to start their own business. Everyone wants to feel like they look good in their eyes, not someone else telling them. That comes for sure, certain, but in their own right. And so I made a decision to go into beauty. And so the company that I targeted was Black Opal. I had seen Black Opal many times when I did television. That was the product of choice by those makeup artists. And it was like, what are those little black sticks? What is that? And each time it will be Black Opal. So I went about finding out who owned Black Opal. And then I pursued that owner for 3 years before he decided to sell. He did not want to sell the company to me. I would see him every time I was in New York. I'd have a drink with him or Italian dinner. Remember me? I'm still here. You changed your mind. So I was very persistent. And one time his business partner came, he didn't come. And he said, you know what? He's going to sell it to you. And I was like, what? Where is he? What happened? At that time, he had been diagnosed with brain cancer. And so he decided that he wanted me to have it. And that was very moving to me as a cancer survivor, and that he would trust me with the business. And so sometimes you just have to be patient and wait and hold on. If you have an idea, if it's meant to be, it's going to happen. And so I am very honored and humbled by him allowing Cheryl McKissick and I to run that business.
Yes,
I'll tell you that persistency, again, is something that has paid off for you. And so it's like it all came together, the passion, the education, the work experience, even down to understanding operations and politics. It all came together into what you're doing today. And interestingly enough, the song that you pick is Luther by Kendrick Lamar and SZA.
I love that song. Love it because it's such a mashup of the past and the new. And so one of the things in accepting my internal desire around beauty, it brings me full circle in my own maturity. Early through my career, I was running from that. People might say, oh, you're a good-looking person, you're very fashionable. They labeled me as this person that there's all the good qualities, and I'm going to take all those good qualities. But with that comes a lot of jealousy, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Or people saying things that they shouldn't really say, because sometimes I am a mirror to things they're trying to be or hoping to be. And so there's a lot of negativity throughout a lot of my life around what I look like, how I dress. You're not every day looking at, I'm so cute, I'm so great, I'm this. That's not how people work. And so I was I'm trying to hide that. Hence, utilities, insurance, anything that is so far removed from that, no one's going to call me a beauty girl. So now I'm leaning in fully to beauty, to ensuring that all Black and brown women have their perfect match, that they look fantastic. I know it plays a part in our overall well-being and our overall ability to not have to worry. If we have a routine, then we don't have to worry about that. It just takes the load off. You're done with that. And now you can really focus on the things that are super important, which are whatever it is you decide, whatever your passion is. You don't have to worry like, I'm not going to look right, or the film's not going to look right. You can be your own person and you can settle in your own skin, which I think is so important for us right now. There's so much judgment, and we have to stop judging each other so harshly. We need all the hand-holding we can get in a world that is increasingly becoming very difficult to navigate if you're a little bit different.
At the end of the day, we all have haters. That's the problem. Like that, what you describe is you got haters.
Either people love it or not. We all have a mission. And so you have to align yourself with people that are going to help you get that mission done, help you get clarity around that mission. And you don't want to have a blind ear to everything. I'm not suggesting that because we can all improve. But at some point, you got to put people's comments in the perspective that they need to be in. Otherwise, you become paralyzed and you're not able to do the work that you're on this earth to do. And we all have a mission. We all do.
Amen to that. And I got to tell you, I'm so glad that you are on this earth. And you can see this, listeners. I'm putting up my Fashion Fair foundation that I cannot live without. Desiree introduced me to it. Some of my friends were like, wait, Fashion Fair is still in business? I didn't know it was still in business. And then you luckily sent me some swatches to match my skin. I matched myself. And it felt like the clouds parted and the sun came out. Because I've been using some other brands that I thought were pretty good in terms of the matching. And it's like sunshine in a bottle. Because not only does it match so well, I need so little of it. Like it's just little dabs. And I feel like my face is just not only completely covered, but it's matching, it's glowing. I've had a lot of people say to me, what are you wearing? Or are you even wearing anything? And I'm like, it's Fashion Fair.
Yes.
So
That's
yeah.
really the point, right? It's like sometimes we put on far too much makeup because it's not matching our complexion and we have to cover our glow, right? And so we really are focused. We're going to focus on brown and Black people. That's what we're good at. And if 10% of Black women bought one Fashion Fair product, imagine how much support we could give to our communities in jobs, scholarships, mentorships, in all the things that are important to us. So I really think my life's work right now is to encourage we as Black people to invest in Black-owned businesses so that money can flow back through our communities.
You heard that, listeners. Everybody share this with a woman who is Black or brown who could actually go on, match her color, and I promise you, be very happy about this product. Desiree, also tell me a little bit more about Black Opal and what are those products and who is that for?
So Black Opal was created by a Greek chemist, his wife, who is Jamaican, and a Black dermatologist. We have a skincare line, and we also have makeup and color. The items are sold at CVS, Ulta, Target, JCPenney's we just opened, salons at JCPenney. So it's interesting to see ourselves there. We've got 23 shades in our Hero Stick product, and everything is skin-centric. Oiliness, perfecting, dry skin. So you will be able to choose what products make the most sense for you. It's blackopalbeauty.com. Also in our Hero product, we have SPF protection. And so that is also an important aspect of Black Opal. And what's incredible, very high quality products that are created in America. Everything is under $20. One of the things we think is super important is that people have an alternative that is super high quality that doesn't break the bank, especially in these times.
Especially in these times. I know our listeners, Desiree's got something for everyone. If you want some high quality makeup at an affordable price, if you want to go back to a brand like a Fashion Fair, she's got something for everybody and for every shade. We'll have links in the show notes for how people can support all of your brands.
And support me. Listen, I'm on Instagram. I am that Desiree.
I'm glad you said that. You are that Desiree. And you are that Desiree. That's for sure. So listeners, we'll put that in the show notes as well as how people can follow you and your journey. But support the brands, guys. Please support the brands. And if it's not for you, give it to a friend, give it to a colleague, give it to a relatives. But we got to support our brands. Desiree, we could talk to you. I mean, such a fascinating life all day. But one thing we always ask our guests, what's that one song that if you just heard it right now, it would put a smile to your face?
You know what? It has to be Flashlight. Funkadelics. Who doesn't get on the dance floor for a Flashlight? If you don't know it, you should know it. It's an oldie but goodie.
Everybody knows Flashlight. Like you said, and if they don't think they know it and they play it, they go, oh, that's
I know that one.
Right. So I'm glad. I'm super excited about you picked Flashlight.
Good. It's so good.
Let's recap your songs because your playlist is fire. I can't wait. It's going to be on Spotify. So there will be the Desirée Rogers playlist on Spotify. It starts with Man in the Mirror by Michael Jackson, We Are One, Frankly Beverly and Maze, Family Reunion, The OJs, Formation by the one and only Beyonce. Last on the list before your bonus song, you did Luther, Kendrick Lamar, and SZA, and your bonus song is Flashlight by Parliament Funkadelic. Desiree, thank you for your journey, for sharing your wisdom and your songs, and being on No Boxes, Just Verses.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to No Boxes, Just Verses. And if this episode moved y'all, please share it, rate us, follow the show on your favorite platform, and we can keep building our leadership playlists together. So you can find me, guys, on Instagram as Shannon Nash1 and No Boxes Just Verses on Instagram. You can also find me on LinkedIn as Shannon Nash ESQ CPA. You can also find No Boxes Just Verses on LinkedIn. You can visit our website at noboxesjustverses.com. Finally, don't forget to check out the show notes. The show notes are super important because this is where the playlists will live. You will be able to get these playlists on Apple and Spotify. You'll also be able to follow up and see how to reach out to the guests, follow them, and support them. Until next time, I need you to stay unboxed. You come for the stories, but you stay for the playlists. I'm Shannon Nash, and I'm out.